Hey viewers, welcome to Chunner Checks It Out. My name's Chunner, and in this video, I'm going to be watching the newest episode of One Piece, episode 1154. And then I will be talking about the manga chapter that just came out, chapter 1169. So if you are anime only, you can go ahead and stick around for the first part of this video. I will try not to talk about any spoilers that happen after the anime. And then after the anime, you will want to stop watching this video as I will start talking about some spoilers that happen after the anime and then start talking about the newest manga chapter, which is going to be about one arc ahead of the current arc. I want to also go ahead and talk about some of the things that I maybe didn't really talk about in the last episode. In the last episode, again, we saw Bonnie turn back into Nika. So we had two Nikas and they were able to take out Saturn for at least just a little while, even though Saturn regenerated. Obviously, the budget went to certain places, so I was really kind of more focused on that. But I did want to touch upon the point of Emmett and how we saw Emmett pull what was kind of like a wind knot from Weatheria of where Nami studied during the 2 years. And within this knot, when Emmett was able to pull this knot, he unleashed some Supreme King Haki that Joy Boy seemed to have put into the knot when it was released. And so I just wanted to talk about Haki for a little bit and my understanding of Haki, as I kind of feel like a lot of people thought Haki was one thing, but in actuality, it's kind of something else. So I think the biggest point here is that Haki is not just the light switch. Haki is not on and off. And that's how I think I always thought about Haki. But in actuality, when you think about it, let's look at the time when Luffy was training with Rayleigh on the island during the 2-year time skip. And Rayleigh taught Luffy armament Haki as well as observation Haki. And so I think some examples of this for sure are, if you look at observation Haki, you can look at Katakuri. And when you think about Katakuri, as it said, he was one of the main antagonists in Whole Cake Island arc. And honestly, Katakuri is one of my favorite characters. But Katakuri has the ability to use observation Haki to see up to potentially, I think it was 10 seconds into the future. And so if you think about other people who might have observation Haki, maybe they can only see 1 to 2 seconds ahead into the future, or maybe they can notice other things. So it's something that it's not only you train to have and it's on and off, but it's kind of like a dial and you can train it more to get better at it. I would probably think about it most as kind of like playing a sport. Let's take baseball, for example. And if you're not familiar with baseball, it really doesn't matter. But one of the things that you have to do in baseball as a defender is when the ball is hit to you, you need to try and catch it. So you need to use your hand-eye coordination to be able to catch the ball. And if you are playing an outfielder and the ball is hit up into the sky, you need to have the hand-eye coordination to be able to predict to see where the ball is. And all this kind of takes training. Also, when you get the ball and you're in the outfield, you need to be able to throw the ball back into your other teammates. And so potentially somebody is running from third to home, and maybe some people can throw it from the outfield all the way to home plate to the catcher or somebody trying to get that other person out. But others, maybe you have to throw to a cutoff man like your second baseman, who will then relay the ball to the catcher. But the point is that it takes training for you to build up that strength, that endurance, that hand-eye coordination to be able to do all these things of catching the ball, fielding the ball, throwing the ball into home plate or maybe a cutoff person who can then relay the ball to where it needs to go. So it's not, oh, I know how to play baseball or I don't know how to play baseball. There's different levels to baseball. There's the minor league, there's high school league, there's major league. And so there's all these different levels to baseball. And even when you get into the Major League Baseball level or in any other sport, when you hit that top tier, there's always other competitors who might be better at one thing or another than you are. And you have to train that. Some players that come to mind, not necessarily in baseball, but you can think of Mia Hamm, soccer player. You could think of, maybe more importantly or more known, Michael Jordan in basketball, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, Cal Raleigh. Cal Raleigh is a player in baseball who did really well this season. You can also think of other people who are top of the class. Directors like Megumi Ishitani, artists like Vincent van Gogh, or you can think of singer-artists like Ado or Taylor Swift. These are just some of the things that you can relate to potentially and see how hockey is not just an on and off thing. It's something that you need to study and progress at and become better at. And the big thing, I think, also what's interesting is in the new world, everyone has armament hockey. And so that's very interesting. But the amount of people who have Conquerors hockey, I'm not really sure, but you can probably think of 10 or less people who have Conquerors hockey. So when you have Conquerors hockey, it's easy to put that into the category of on or off because these 10 people have Conquerors hockey. But in actuality, Conquerors hockey is just like armament hockey or observation hockey, where it can be studied. And because so few people have Conquerors hockey, it's hard to relate because you don't even see all these people who have Conquerors hockey. And the ones who have Conquerors hockey, they're like, oh, they're so strong. But if you potentially put other people in the same room of other people who have Conquerors hockey, then you might see a difference of levels within Conquerors hockey. And so I think that's what they're trying to show in this last episode here, of how strong Joy Boy was to be able to put this extremely strong Conquerors hockey in this knot that Emmett was able to release. So let's go ahead and see what happens in this next episode. I'm assuming this is going to be the last episode, or I heard maybe there's one more episode after this, but we're winding down an era with One Piece where One Piece is shown all year round, and we're starting to go to seasonal. So, yo, let's check it out. Hey, wasn't that broken? Oh, maybe it was broken above this. So I think it was broken, but it must have been broken above this section here, because this is kind of the bottom section. And you can see it's kind of cracked there. That was when Luffy and Bonnie were able to break the mast. Or not the mast, not sure what that's called, that front section. It worked. Strong Supreme King Hockey. A snake. A snake like Luffy. That's funny. Time to leave. To Elba. News. World Economic Journal.
世界が海に沈むなんて空こそが俺の住みか。そういう意味じゃ俺の時代か。ほら驚きのニュースが山ほど入ってきたぜ。四皇黒ひげ VS トラファルガーロー、四皇赤髪 VS ユースタスキャプテンキッド、四皇麦わらのルフィはベガパンク殺害と。
嘘つき。
あの配信は何じゃ。
What are you gonna do now, Kizaru?
応答せよボルサリーノ。他の門はどうしたんじゃ。一人残らず寝てるね。脱走者は。
Tomorrow, where are you going?
おい杯、お前さん親友を殺したことあんのかい。
Interesting. I always called him Sakazuki, but here he calls him Sakazuki.
おい杯。
Sakazuki. In Japanese, that's Sakazuki. Sakazuki. Instead of Sakazuki. 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 Interesting where the pronunciation of syllables goes there. This is like some Sai and Naruto.
お前ら俺の頭脳が欲しいのさ。研究費いくら出せる？エッグヘッドと名付けるつもりじゃ。500年後の未来を作るんじゃ。手伝ってくれボルサリーノ。しっかり頼むぞボルサリーノ。ペッペッペッペッペッペッペッペッペッペッペッペッペッ。
It's so crazy how his personality just got manipulated like that. Trying to fight for the cause instead of fight for what's right. You fight for what you're ordered to do instead of making up your own decision. Not letting personal feelings get in the way. I suppose that could go both ways, because whether you let personal feelings get in the way, let's say, for example, you are with the Navy and you're aligned, or your best friend is a pirate and you're trying to capture them, your personal feelings would want to let them escape, whereas your duty and what your uppers are telling you to do is to go capture them or kill them, but they're your best friend. That's not the case here. So in this case, he was ordered to do something and he's trying to follow their code, and whether that's his code or not, he's deciding whether he's having regrets or not. Obviously he is. I mean, he executed Buster Call, he killed his best friend, or he killed somebody that was closely related to him. Oh, they have his body. Saw his death coming. York stole a portion of the Mother Flame?
まあまあ決まったわけでは。残念ながら完璧にアリバイが成立するのは我々3人だけです。犯人を
Of course, because Lilith is evil.
大変大変、犯人が特定できました。ヨークです。
Oh, they knew. Of course, Vegapunk's gonna find out. He's literally the smartest person in the world, and you have three Vegapunks together. So they used the portion of the Mother Flame that was stolen to power one of the weapons. But they only had a portion of the Mother Flame. So what happens if they have the full Mother Flame? Is it just one shot, or is it done? Or is it just because you have the full Mother Flame, it's more powerful? Or does that mean you have more shots? So does that mean that humanity is going to live on the clouds? They're going to live on the sky when the whole world goes under? Skypiea is actually going to become birth. I'm a humble genius scientist. Erase their own memories. Then how come the other Vegapunks didn't find that out either?
我々の勝利である。おはよう諸君。君たちの記憶には空白の2週間が生まれたが、
The 2-week void.
一つだけ教えておこうか。世界政府に空白の100年の研究がバレたが、そうではないが、私が死ねば何か起きる気がするんじゃ。俺の夢、エルバフェ。
Oh wow. Alright, so that episode was basically a recap episode, honestly. And we did see the story from Vegapunk's side of all the events leading up to this moment here. And it looks like there'll be one more episode of course, the party at the end of the arc. And on the next arc, it did say, it looks like, and you can tell from talking to the giants and us being with the giants, that we are going to Elbaf. So if you are anime only and don't want to see spoilers from the manga or hear about what happens next, this is the time that you want to stop watching this video. And then I'm going to go ahead and talk about the manga chapter. And I would also not read the comments because there could be potential spoilers in there. If you want to comment, that's great. And I would love to see that, but you probably don't want to read any of the comments as they could contain some spoilers. I would normally also talk about some news, but I didn't see any news worth noting for the week. So let's go ahead and talk about the manga chapter that came out on December 21st, chapter 1169 of One Piece. This is the newest chapter. So there was some very interesting information that this chapter introduced, but ultimately was a kind of recap chapter to get to where we are at the present day in Elbaf. So it starts off with 14 years ago, and that's when the last manga chapter ended, was when Shanks left the Holy Knights, or it had gone missing. And one of the big things that you can see here is that you can see Shanks' personality. He is back in Elbaf 14 years ago, and he's talking to Scooper Gabbin, and they're talking about how Roger had a son, and they're talking about what kind of personality that would be. Of course, that would be Ace, and you can see the change in personality when he was back in Mary Joy versus now he is talking to Scooper Gabbin. Back then, he was pretending to be a very angry person, and now you can obviously see that he is his happy, normal Shanks again. So it's not confirmed, but I just want to say that he probably was doing that as a cover to open up the armory and let the slaves escape, and potentially some other things that he could have done as a god knight or as someone with celestial dragon descendant blood. So we also see that Harold has joined up with Emu, and they're with the Shallows Covenant, same rank as Shanks. Shanks is saying that even with the Shallows Covenant, because there are, I believe, 3 different levels. So there's the Shallows Covenant, which is the lowest level, and then you have the Depths Covenant, and then the Abysmal Covenant as the highest level. And if you were to progress onto the Depths Covenant as Harold has, then Emu is going to have more control over you. We do see more of Emu's power, where he seems to be able to telepathically communicate with anyone in the Covenant who's given that tattoo. And one of the biggest reveals I think that happened, which is really interesting, is that Shanks got his tattoo on his left arm for the Shallows Covenant. So this tattoo allows Emu to communicate with you, and Shanks specifically said that if you go to the Depths Covenant or Abysmal Covenant, then Emu has more power over you. And we can see that with Harold, as Harold is being controlled by Emu, kind of like a Dofi ability, but without the strings and puppet mastering. He's using, or Emu is using, this tattoo as a ways to control you. And so what's interesting was that Shanks's tattoo was on his left arm. His left arm was what in episode 3 we saw the sea beast potentially bite off Shanks' arm. Now, did the sea beast bite off Shanks' arm, or did Shanks cut it off himself? Did Shanks let the sea beast bite off his arm so that Emu doesn't have control over him anymore? That's so fascinating, because that's also when, I believe, when he stole the Gum Gum no Mi, or the Nika Nika fruit, and he had that fruit. And so I'm wondering if Emu was able to communicate with him then. And so for Shanks to get out of that situation, because he pretended to be on their side, he let the sea beast bite off his arm so that Emu doesn't have control over him anymore. Luffy puts the blame on himself that Shanks lost his arm, when in actuality, Shanks wanted to lose his arm so that Emu no longer had control over him. That's a fascinating story. We also see, after Shanks and Harold leave Mary Joy, it seems that they communicated with each other and did kind of realize that Emu was doing something mischievous, though they didn't know what. And we did see in one of the previous chapters that Shanks was being really mean to Harold. And so potentially they made up there. I'm not really sure what happened in that situation. We also see the fallout with Harold, because Harold wants the Giants and the country of Elbaf to become in good relations with the government, because Emu actually wants to use the Giants and tells Harold that he wants to control the Giants and use them as a weapon to influence other countries. And that's exactly what Harold doesn't want. We also see when Harold is going out of control, being controlled by Emu, and Harold wants his people to chain him to the pillar and try and kill him. But even though they stab him multiple times, he doesn't die, just like any of the 5 elders. So as Shanks is talking to Scooper Gabbin, he is thinking that this might happen to Harold, and he arrives on the scene as Harold is kind of making this big commotion in the castle. So we also saw in one of the last episodes, we also saw in one of the last few chapters back in God Valley, that you can use a powerful amount of Supreme King Haki to stop the 5 elders. And so I'm assuming that's what's going to happen here with Shanks and Scooper Gabbin. That's interesting, because what we saw in the last anime episode of how Emmett was implanted with this Supreme King Haki from Joy Boy, he was able to release this Supreme King Haki to beat back the 5 elders and potentially de-summon them or stop them. I'm not sure exactly what happened, but he made them transform back into their previous state. We also saw this in God Valley incident with Garp and Roger teaming up against Rocks, and they were able to stop Rocks. And Rocks was kind of in the same situation where he was being controlled by Emu, where he didn't want to be controlled. Although in that situation, he never signed up with Emu. Emu was actually able to just take him over. And so in this situation, Harold actually submitted his power to Emu, though he didn't realize that Emu had evil intentions. We're probably going to see Scooper Gabbin and Shanks take out Harold with a very powerful Supreme King Haki. So tell me what you think about this manga chapter. Tell me what you think about One Piece. And if you like this video, it would really help me out if you like, comment, subscribe. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.